You ever wake up one morning thinking today's going to be just like any other day, and then before your second cup of coffee, you're standing in your own driveway while a sheriff's deputy tells the neighborhood HOA president to step away from your truck like it's some kind of bomb threat? Yeah, that happened to me. I can still see Karen, big sunglasses mouth, already going a mile a minute, waving her phone around like it was the launch codes. She had just called 911 on me for parking on my own damn land, and if you think that's the craziest part of this story, you might want to buckle up. I'm Paul Monroe, 62 years old, retired electrician, born and raised in the same quiet corner of Montana, and I built this ranch with my own hands. My son Ethan grew up out here, learned to ride a horse before he could even tie his shoes, and now, funnily enough, he's the county sheriff. Never thought I'd be the kind of guy needing my own son to sort out a mess like this, but that's life, right? Some folks, you try to get along, wave at them, help them out when their dog gets stuck in a ditch, and it just isn't enough. Karen moved in a couple years back straight from California with her luxury SUV designer purse and the attitude that God himself gave her dominion over everything she could see. Soon as she got herself elected HOA president, she decided my ranch was an eyesore and set out to fix it, never mind that my property isn't even technically in her neighborhood. It started small, you know. Complaints about my roosters crowing, said the smell of hay ruined her morning jog, claimed my old truck made her street look poor. I'd laugh it off if she wasn't so dead serious, always muttering about community aesthetics and her sacred HOA rules. Last Friday, though, she finally crossed a line, rolled up past the gate, which she wasn't allowed to do, and tried to give me a parking citation on my own gravel. You ever have someone try to write you a ticket on your own land? That's the moment I realized, oh, this ain't about rules, this is about control. She's shouting, waving her clipboard, snapping photos of my truck, my barn, even my dogs. I told her politely as I could, Karen, you're trespassing. You need to leave. Her reply, dial 911 and tell the dispatcher I was hostile, dangerous, and squatting with an abandoned vehicle. I just stood there wondering if I'd wandered into some TV show prank, but nope, the cruiser pulled up right on cue. And here's where the universe must have a sense of humor. Because who steps out of the second squad car but my son, Sheriff Ethan Monroe? Karen's face went from red to white so fast I thought she might faint. Your dad? She stuttered. Ethan's no fool. He looks at me, looks at Karen and says, Ma'am, you're standing on my father's ranch. You're the one trespassing. Karen sputtered, tried to explain herself, but Ethan just called his deputy over, asked for her ID, and told her she'd need to explain exactly how she got past the gate. That's when the radio crackled. Deputy gets a call, says there's a possible break-in, reported rear barn entry. I hadn't called it in, and for a split second I thought maybe Karen was crazier than I realized. But then horses start snorting in the barn, and Ethan goes into full sheriff mode. Tells Karen to stay put, tells me to stay put. But you know how it is when something's not right on your own land. You don't just sit and wait. So I took my truck around the side just in time to see Ethan and the deputy pinning a kid hoodie, maybe 25, against the back fence, wire cutter still in his hands. Turns out the guy was told by a lady with blonde hair and big sunglasses that the back fence was a shortcut out of town. Yeah, you guessed it, Karen. When Ethan confronted her, she tried to play dumb, but eventually admitted she'd mentioned a trail. Never mind, it was my property, and never mind, the guy just cut a big hole in the fence. Ethan told her flat out she was getting reported, and this wasn't just a warning. That's when I realized this woman wasn't just nosy, she was dangerous, telling lies, sending strangers onto my land, anything to make my life miserable. The next morning I found a letter pinned to my gate. Zoning violation. Apparently, I was now being accused of building unauthorized structures using my land inappropriately, you name it. All filed anonymously. But the county clerk, Janet, ran it back. And what do you know? The digital trail led straight to the HOA complaint board in Karen's name. Janet shook her head. Said I'd need hard proof if I wanted to fight it. Welcome to small-town politics where everyone knows your name, but the system only works for those who scream loudest. Now let me back up a sec. Karen wasn't doing this alone. Later that week, I got a text from an unknown number, a screenshot of an email Karen had sent a zoning board member talking about Phase 2 and how once the violation sticks, we move to Phase 2. You know what I mean. She was planning this all along, trying to get me off my own land, maybe for a developer, maybe just for spite, I couldn't tell. Ethan and I started digging, Turns out Karen's got a history real estate deals back in California, running city council schemes, and now she's whispering in ears around here, promising higher property values if the board would just expand into ranch land. When Ethan brought in Mrs. Beverly Simmons, the HOA vice president, a tough old lady who's had enough of Karen's games, things got interesting. Beverly had proof minutes from secret HOA meetings, texts between Karen and county officials, even a proposal for a walking trail that would cut straight through my property. The county hearing was like a bad episode of reality TV. Karen strutted in like she owned the place, gave her speech about public safety and modernizing the neighborhood. Ethan stood up next, cool as you like, and laid out building permits testimony from neighbors. And thanks to Beverly, the real bombshell emails and meeting minutes proving Karen was abusing her HOA position to try and grab my land for a development scheme. The board chair's jaw about hit the floor. Then came the kicker. A fire broke out in my back barn the next day. Someone torched it plain as day. And in the ashes, a flyer for Cedar Trails Community Walking Park with Karen's name right at the bottom. The sheriff's office started investigating, but nobody was arrested, not yet. Karen, of course, went radio silent except to file a restraining order against me, which kept me from entering any property owned or managed by the HOA, including the county annex, where the final hearing was set. You see where this is going. But the thing Karen never counted on, she wasn't the only one who could play the game. Ethan had my back, and so did the community. Folks brought over food, offered to testify, and when the final zoning board hearing came around, my son took my place, stood in that room, and laid it all bare. Beverly moved for a vote of no confidence, handed over the evidence, and Karen, well, she lost it. Started yelling, blaming everyone, even as security hauled her out. The board dismissed every single complaint against me, cleared my name, and called for an ethics investigation into Karen. I watched it all on Beverly's phone, hidden under the table, grinning like a fool. A week later, Karen was out as HOA president, her name in the local news for all the wrong reasons, and soon after she packed up her life and left town without so much as a wave. The barn got rebuilt, neighbors came together, and we even hung a new saddle in the rafters. Wasn't my late wife's, but it stood for her spirit just the same. Now I stand out on the porch with Ethan, some morning's coffee in hand, looking out over the fields. "You ever think of retiring?" he asks. I laugh. "Not yet. Someone's got to keep the vultures away." So that's my story, and it ain't over, not by a long shot. In towns like this, justice comes slow but sure, and sometimes you've got to dig your heels in and fight for what's right, even if the fight comes with burned barns and courtroom battles. What do you think? Was I wrong to stand my ground? Was Karen just trying to improve the neighborhood, or was it all just greed dressed up as good intentions? Let me know down in the comments, because out here community means everything, and sometimes the line between right and wrong is drawn right through your own backyard.